So last time we essentially created this little block of comments and codes and stuff. Let's talk a little bit about variables. And I want you to think of variables as sort of like temporary storage places. So for example, in the bottom right hand corner, you'll see there's a little slot here. There's these little things under, you see how it says graphs, there's functions, there's macros, there's variables. If we click plus here, you'll see that there is it creates a new essentially component under this component section. It creates a new little thing called new var, and it's of type Boolean. And you can see there's these different types, right? And they keep going on and on for these different variable types. So let's start off talking just a little bit about what an integer is. So if I create an integer there and I just type in number for the new variable name, I can change that up here. What an integer is, it's really just any whole number without a decimal. All right, so maybe we'll clean all this up. So or we'll just kind of move down here. So I'm gonna grab my event begin play, come down here a little bit. And again, control will give you that extra little zoom in. And what I'd like to do is on my integer here, I'd like to print what's inside of the scene. So how do we do that? Well, one, we're gonna have to right click and type out print and bring out our print string function, and then we'll wire that in. And then within this, you could see that we have this option here where it says string hello. So maybe we create another variable really quick, and we'll make this one of type string, and then we'll name this one string variable. And because like most programmers and artists, I want to reuse as much as I can. So I'm just gonna first make sure maybe I typed that right. Variable. Here we go. I'm gonna copy this and notice that there's no value here. If I click on this integer, there's no value here. So to bring up the value, you have to make sure you compile it. And so here's my string variable. Inside of this, I want it to store stored string variable, right? And I could drag this out and I can just wire this. I'm going to get this variable, and that means I'm getting a reference. And I'm going to wire this right into here, this string here. I'm going to compile and save this. So on event begin play, for 2 seconds, I should get in the color blue the string variable. It's not gonna, actually, let's name this string variable text. And that way we know that it's not just printing out the name of my variable, it's printing out this text that's stored here. So let's compile and save this. Let's press play. Now you can see we get hello world. And that's, so let's actually disconnect this. Remember, you hold Alt and you click on that, and that'll disconnect this, and let's compile and save it. So this will no longer run on tick. So now when I press play, you see string variable text. Okay, great. So how do we get it to print maybe our integer? So let's grab our number here and let's get that. And we could actually just copy, and then wherever my cursor is, if I hit Control V, print this, and I wire this in here. And what it'll do, because this is taking in a string type, is it'll actually add this node. And what this node does is it converts an integer value to a string. So it's going to turn the number into essentially glyphs or letters, right? So I'm going to go ahead and compile and save this. And now when I press play, it's going to be, you'll see string variable text n0. And if we wanted to delay it, we know how to do that, right? We could add a delay, right? We can type delay here. And I can drag it here, and I can just wire this in this way. And I'll compile and save that. And, you know, you have a little bit of a delay between, well, it's not that long of a delay. Let's try that one more time. Let's do 2-second delay. And let's go ahead and press play on this, and you can see string variable text. We wait about 2 seconds and we get 0. All right, so you probably noticed when I drag this out, for example, this integer number, I get a get number and I get a set number. So what is the set number? Well, you probably guessed that what I'm doing is I can set or change the value of this number. So if I have a number here and I set this to 50, let's say, right? And I press play here, you'll see string variable text, and then it says 50 because it's printing the value stored inside here. Well, if I reset the number, you know, this is the same variable. We're just going to set it, and we set this to 100. And I'm going to go ahead and select both my delay and my print string here, Control C, Control V. Move this over. I'm going to wire this in, and I'm going to make this a little bit shorter. I'm going to make this 1 second, just so we're not berating the point. So let's go ahead and wire this set value. I'm going to go ahead and wire this in here. And notice, I want you to notice these execution pins for a second, because we're going to come back to that in a moment. So now when I press play, you'll see set variable text 50, 0. So why did that happen? Well, the thing is, we never reset the value. So we even have a warning here saying, hey, set number was pruned. That means it went back to 0 because its execution pin is not connected. So when you set a value to something, you need to make sure that you're actually changing or you're executing or you're doing something there. And for that, you need to execute what's happening in this node. This node is actually doing something. It's setting a value versus just grabbing a value. So now when we do this, let's see if it prunes it again to 0. We get string variable text 50, and then we get 100. So there we go. So that's how you get a variable, right? We drag this out, we get the variable, and that's going to just display what's in there. And then if we want to set the variable, we set the value by bringing it in, and then we add the execution pins here. All right, let me show you just a couple important variables. We're going to be reusing these a lot, so I don't want you to, worry too much if you're like, well, a lot of times if you're a designer or artist, you're always wondering the why. Like, why do we do it? What's the point? Right now, we're sort of learning vocabulary and language. Okay, so here's our variable. I'm going to click this, and I'm going to go ahead and add a Boolean variable this time. Now, Booleans are either 0, 1, or true or false, right? So what we could use this for is like, we could say has health, right? So we'll do has health is the name of this variable here, and we'll compile and save this. And by default, you can see there's a check mark here. Right now it's false, so we don't have health. And if I check this on, it's true. So let's drag this in, and let's do get health. Now notice that the color of this Boolean variable is red, right? And the print to screen here is red. And what this shows you is this is a slot that takes in a Boolean value. It even tells you when I overlay this, it says print to screen Boolean, whether or not to print the output to the screen. So I can actually use this and wire it directly in here. And I could say, hey, print to screen is based on this value. And right now it is set to false. So let's see if it actually prints 100 to the screen. So let's compile and save this. And let's press play. We have our string variable text, our 50, and no 100. Okay, so let's turn this on. Let's make this Boolean true. And it also equates to the number 1. So let's press play there. 50, 100. There we go. Yeah, so that's a good way of using our Boolean. And there's another way of doing it, and that's with this branching node. You can right-click and search for branch, or you could do what I did, where you hold the letter B as in boy and click on that here. And we can wire this in here. And we can use this as a little bit more of a more expressive way of controlling this. So I could say, hey, if the player has health, which is true, that means that our player's health is set to 100, right? So it goes here, and this is wired in here. Remember we told you guys about these execution pins before. They kind of help because it can get really messy, right? But false is, let's go ahead and copy this and paste this here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab another number here. Let's copy and paste this. And let's set this to 0. And what I'm going to say here is, hey, you know what? I'm going to wire this directly into here. And I'm going to wire this, we can wire this false directly into here. And so what's going to happen is, if this is true, it's going to take this 100 value and it's going to print it here. But if it's set to false, it's going to go down here and it's going to set the number to 0 and it's going to print that to the screen. But we also have to make sure that we do what? Well, we wire this inside of here so that it does that conversion. Otherwise, we're going to get that error where it says it's, we'll get a warning. So let's compile and save this. And this time, what's the condition of my branch? Well, let's go ahead and just turn this off. It's set to false. So take a moment and think about this. If we turn this to false and it runs through this, what is the value of our variable? So let's compile and save this and then press play. So we get our string variable text, we get our 50, and we get 0. And the reason for that is because this branch sets this to false. The last thing I want to show you is something called a vector, which we use quite often. So I'll name this player POS for position. And what this can do is this vector here, is it can get the position, the current position. And a lot of times we want to check how far an enemy away a player is from an enemy, a health box, things like that, to update things like maps and stuff. So we can use this player position, which is going to store, let's compile this, the current position of something. Right now, player position is set to 0, 0, 0. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna take a moment here and just for the sake of showing this a little sooner, I'm going to break this. I'm going to hold Alt and break this execution, and I'm going to just copy this print string here just to kind of show you. Let's copy this, let's paste this, and I'm going to wire in my player position to here, and I'm going to wire this into here. And so we'll just kind of focus on this for a second. So what do you think this value is going to be, right? If we look at this value here. So let's take a guess, and then let's see what happens in our editor. So I'm going to go ahead and press play here. And you can see the current value is 0, 0, 0. So this stores the X, Y, and Z value. So if I select, for example, my player start here, you could see the location is 0, 0, 0 or 0, 0, 92. That's the location of this player position. Well, we would like to, let's say we want to set this to the current position of this blueprint, right? So where's our blueprint? Here's our blueprint fun, which is set to these weird values. So what we can do is we could say, okay, well, right now my player position is set to 0, 0. It's just an empty variable, okay? So let me kind of move this down. I can actually grab this player position and I can set it to something. Well, what do I want to set it to? Well, let's say in this particular instance, I want to get an update to where my current position is of this game object here. So let's say this is a player. I can grab my default scene root here, drop it in there, and I could say, well, how do I figure out what the current position is? Well, if I go back over here and I look at the BP fun here, there's a section called transform, and there's location, which is here. And if I click on there, it's set to relative. That means the current position. If I set it to world, it's going to give me essentially the absolute location, which is its relation to the world. So it says relative here. Let's see, what can we do? So can we access the transform and then grab the relative position? I don't know. Let's find out. I mean, I do know, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm going to type out transform here. And look at this, get relative location. And if I wire this in here, right, I could probably wire this directly in here too, and it'll sort of produce the same, it'll produce the result, right? But it's not storing it. So if I press play right now, you could see 881, 407, 58.9. And if I select BP Fun, 881, 467, and so on. But if I want to set that value so I can update it, I can wire this directly into this value. And then I can, let's break this. Let's delete that. I can, let's just delete this altogether. And I can wire this. Well, let's leave that for a second. Let's wire this here. And then let's go ahead and steal a node, a delay, or these two. And let's paste them down here. And let's wire this up like this, right? And we'll make our own execution link node there, and we'll wire this into the delay here. And we're going to grab player position and wire this into the delay. Actually, we don't need to wire that in delay, but we could wire this here, right? Because what we're doing is we're updating the current position to whatever this game object is rooted to. So let's take a look at this. So right now, the player position here is 0, 0, 0. We're going to reset the position to whatever the position is of this object. So we should be printing 0, 0, 0, and then we have a delay, which will make it much shorter. We'll do it like 1 second. And then we're going to print the current position. So let's compile and save this, and let's press play. And you could see 0, 0, 0, and then we updated the position. So I think this is a good place to stop in this video on variables because we're going to be using this a lot. But I think it gives you a pretty good idea of the most commonly used, with the exception of, there's a bunch of others, float, and we're going to talk about arrays and all that stuff later. But just as a good understanding of what a variable is a temporary storage place, and you could store different types of things in variables. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I'll see you in the next lesson.